Invito al estrado a la profesora TuSSYADIAH. Ella es en estos momentos seguramente una de las personas más significadas en el mundo de la... Bueno, voy hablando mientras así vamos ganando tiempo. En el mundo precisamente de la relación entre las tecnologías de la información, la innovación y el turismo. Digo que es de las personas más significadas no solamente en este mundo, sino más significadas en el mundo acerca de esta cuestión, que son dos cuestiones, diríamos, coincidentes en este caso. Ella es la directora del Departamento de Hospitality y es profesora de Hospitality y Experiencia Digital y directora también del grupo de investigación de Digital Visitor Economy de la Escuela de Gestión de Turismo y Hospitalidad de la Universidad de Surrey. Pero además de esto y de sus intereses en diseño de experiencia, inteligencia artificial, robótica, consumo colaborativo, experiencias inmersivas, interacción hombre-computador, mediación tecnológica, etc., es importante también que ella actualmente es presidenta de la Federación Internacional para las Tecnologías de la Información, el viaje y el turismo desde 2018 y es también miembro fundadora de la Alianza para la Innovación y la Investigación en Turismo y Hospitalidad. Tiene un currículum muy extenso, lo pueden buscar en la web, para algo sirven las tecnologías. Simplemente lo que quiero señalar es precisamente este carácter importante, significado que tiene su presencia hoy aquí, tanto a nivel de lo que su propia carrera profesional ha significado, como especialmente también a nivel de su representación en términos de organismos internacionales dedicados directamente a aquello que nos atañe actualmente. Thank you very much, Elise, for being here today, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me. And I have to apologize that I don't understand Catalan or Spanish, and so I trust that the introduction was really probably overstating what I am, who I am. But anyway, I'm happy to be here. I'm wearing two hats, as Salvador already mentioned earlier. So I'm from University of Surrey. I'm an academic, so University of Surrey is paying my salary. But I'm also president of the International Federation for IT and Travel and Tourism, and it's a member-based organization. We're a community researching on IT in travel and tourism. So today, when I was asked to speak at this forum, I would like to talk about an idea of how we are trying continuously to make travel more intelligent. And by intelligent, and it's also not only about trying to find new ways for us to offer tourists or for tourists to travel more seamlessly and to make travel and tourism more responsible and more sustainable. But it's also about looking at how parts of this ecosystem of tourism and travel are connected, and how can we make this connection a little bit more, how can I say, synergistic, so that travel and tourism can contribute more to sustainability in the future. So what I'm going to talk about today, basically, is the idea of digital transformation, because I'm naturally interested in technology, and so that's going to be my focus of the talk. And as probably everyone here is aware of, last year's UNWTO World Tourism Day, the theme was tourism and digital transformation. So this is basically the recognition that UNWTO finally recognized that the roles of technology in travel and tourism, and how technology plays a significant contribution to the shaping of how travel and tourism will be in the future. So what I'm going to do today is looking into what are the digital transformations that are happening in travel and tourism. Firstly, technology allows us to be more innovative. So there are a lot of startup companies popping up in travel and tourism because of the advancements of technology, whether it's taking advantage of the existing platforms or actually developing new platforms and new business models in travel tech. We're also looking at how technology can increase efficiency for existing travel companies and also travel and tourism organizations. And with that comes also the idea that technology can allow, from a broader macroeconomic perspective, increase productivity in the tourism sectors. I'm going to go into that a little bit deeper later. And then also, most importantly, because we are in the business of serving tourists and travelers, technology can play a significant role in enhancing and shaping tourist experiences, changing in some ways. And to me, another area that's very important, especially when we talk about sustainability, is the idea that technology can allow us to actually provide access to those who traditionally, or in a traditional sense, in a without technology, are limited in terms of accessing tourism experiences. So technology can be used by different organizations, tourism marketing organizations, attractions, hospitality businesses, and so on and so forth, to actually give access to those with limited mobility. And also, another thing is about inclusion. So how can we create an ecosystem of travel and tourism to be more inclusive, to allow us to allow everyone interested in travel and tourism to be part of the ecosystem. So, to me, these are some of the key technology enablers at the moment. This is one that I'm particularly interested in, is artificial intelligence. And then later on, there's going to be a talk about blockchain. I'm not researching on blockchain in particular at the moment, but that's something that's really, really going to shape the future of tourism. And then we're also the travel and tourism is shaped by the idea that we can make things, lots of different things, connected with Internet of Things, and also the idea of more immersive experiences with, for example, virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. So these are, of course, not all technologies available. We still have, for example, a very significant role of platform, and the way that platforms still allow us to develop new business models and so on. But for today, I'm going to focus on the first one, which is artificial intelligence. And by artificial intelligence, I'm talking about this fields of artificial intelligence. So that includes, basically, if you look at how we define artificial intelligence, most of the time people think of systems that can act humanly or think humanly. And for most, we understand artificial intelligence as systems that can behave or act in a rational manner. By rational, it means they will be able to make the connection between goals, action, and outcomes. And to be able to do so, they would need this capabilities or capacities. So that includes, the way that they could communicate with us, with humans, with natural language processing. They should be able to actually also organize knowledge, to be able to, for example, answer questions from us. They should be able to actually think in an automated way, so automated reasoning, meaning that they would be able to learn by itself by looking into the knowledge that they systematically has organized. And then also the idea that they should be able to create new knowledge or generating new patterns from understanding data behind things. And those four are basically what a system need to be able to be considered artificial intelligence, whether or not they have a shape or a physical form. But now, when we talk about artificial intelligence, sometimes we connect that with robotics, right? So something that has a shape, a physical form. And for that, we need two more, at least, capabilities. One is computer vision. It means that they should be able to recognize objects in front of them. For example, if we approach a robot, they would actually be aware that there's somebody in front of them. And the next one is robotics. So that is basically just the physical form that allow systems to move about and to respond. So with this, bear in mind that I'm an academic, so I look at a lot of, I do research and look at other people's research about this. And so, in the industry, we like to predict things, right? So artificial intelligence, what's going to happen in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, what's going to happen to the intelligence of machines, so what's going to happen to us, human beings, and how we are going to be replaced and when we are going to be replaced by machines. So this here is a kind of a prediction of the level of intelligence that machines would have. So it's from mechanical to the highest one is empathetic intelligence, meaning that machines would eventually be empathetically showing empathy, let's say, as the same level as human beings. I'm not sure when that is going to happen. An example of it will be now we have, for example, a robot Sophia, right? Saudi Arabia adopted her as a citizen. And so, but, there's just some examples of that capability. But according to a lot of research, we are not far away from having machines that can have the capability of intuitively make decisions from understanding of data. So now we are at the analytical level, right? So we have all kinds of machines that know how to predict things from big data and so on. And then we're going to go a step further into perhaps having more machines that can act intuitively. So, and then I have to put my picture there because I have lots of other robots. But and then in travel and tourism, now in addition to artificial intelligence and systems that we apply in the back office, let's put it that way, for business operations, we do have also we are witnessing increasingly that companies are adopting robots, service robots in travel and tourism settings, and with this. If we look at history, in the past, AI and robotics research are always really integrated. They are, coming from the same group of people trying to create machines that are intelligent. And then we started to see that these groups of researchers kind of separated into two groups. One that looks at intelligence in terms of like a top-down approach of creating machines that think, and then the other one really only focusing on the mechanical aspects of robotics. And so there are really, one group is AI researchers, and the other group is basically mechanical engineering, creating robots. But in the last decade, we actually see how they actually merge again, integrate again, and only then we actually see lots of really useful intelligent robots that we can apply in service settings. Because in the past, when we think of manufacturing, robots in manufacturing are mostly mechanical. But now, if we want to apply robotics in a service settings, it's always people-oriented. We have to implement different kinds of robotics, and that's why we need more intelligent robots. Today, what we have a lot, also in service settings, are robots with sensor and interactive robots, meaning that they can function only when we, as a human being, as a user, would interact with it by giving them voice commands, by touching them, by anything. But we do not have yet autonomous robots that they have the capability of generating or making correct judgment on their own. So what are the applications of this in tourism? And we see some of the most important, to me, applications that would shape tourism and travel in the future. One is self-driving vehicles. I think, earlier there's also a discussion about self-driving vehicles, and then it has been tested for a while, and some of the public transports in big cities are already automated anyway. And so I think in the future, in the near future, we will see more of autonomous vehicles being applied. And how does that influence travel and tourism? There has been a lot of research and talk about that. And then there's also chatbots. Very important, because what happens with chatbots is you can generate, or you can guide tourists from pre-trip to on-site to post-trip experiences by having a kind of a personal guide or personal assistant. And by doing so, you will be able to actually control more of the tourist experiences. And then we have service robots. I mentioned that before. Now, very important is also recognition technology. Now, more and more airports and airlines and hotels are actually implementing biometric boarding, for example. Some airline companies are working together with specific airports at the moment to allow for passengers to just produce their identification once. And then they could breeze through the gates using their face, basically. Your face is your ID. We have e-gates everywhere now here in Europe. But then also airline companies started doing biometric boarding, right? And then hotels are also started implementing biometric or facial recognition to open the door to your room. So your face is your key, and so on. And so I think that would actually change a lot of how we travel and how we provide or we offer services to travelers. And lastly, automated everything, of course. And it's basically not only for consumer-facing functions, but also for back office. So in terms of revenue management, in terms of marketing and promotion, and so on and so forth. So we rely a lot on AI systems to actually scour data and then make predictions, and then also target our customers with personalized, customized marketing messages. So I have examples here. In Heathrow, there's already these automated pods that you can call, and it's driverless, right? So it's easy now for tracks that are kind of limited. It's not, free on the road where other cars with human drivers are around, and that's a little bit more complex. And then we see also hotels popping up with robots. So last year, September, I was in 5 or 6 different henna hotels in Japan. So that was the first robotic hotels that basically their vision is to have a low-cost hotel. So they eliminate most of the human labor and replace them with robots. So this one is the reception, basically, so you can check in with the robot, and then if you don't want to see anybody, you will be able to just go and stay at the hotel without seeing anyone, but interacting only with robots. And of course, lately you probably follow the news that they fired half of the robots because they didn't function very well. So this girl is kind of okay, but they do have robots in the room, kind of an in-room companion where you can, give them voice commands. But what happened was, apparently when guests are snoring, the robot actually thought that it was a voice command that they didn't understand. But anyway, so they kept asking, "Can you repeat that, please?" But anyway, so that's basically the idea of where we are at the moment. Although there are some initiatives to go to this direction, but I think there's still, we need to learn more of how to implement this a little bit more effectively. So what happens then in terms of business, in terms of experience? Of course, what the hotel wants is essentially to make everything self-service, right? So if we go to the airport now, most of the time we check in, we put our luggage into an automated check-in system, right? It's all self-service. We know how to do it. Because we've been doing this for maybe 5 years or so. So the idea is why can't we do this with hotel as well? So the idea for them is really to make hotel low cost and making it a self-service. But what then? What are the implications? So in this case, the service quality in the past, when we talk about hotels, when we talk about other attractions, for example, with travel and tourism, it is all about personnel, right? It's all about how friendly your reception is, how friendly people are at the restaurants, and so on and so forth. Now, if we eliminate them, the service quality is then determined by human-computer interactions. Right? And so in this case, the role of technology designers, developers, and in this case, user experience, is becoming tremendous. Because now we are relying more on machines. And so in this case, we also shift the responsibility a little bit more to the customers. Because now it is about customers interacting with machines to get service. Right? So it's not, so there's a shift in terms of responsibility. And that is basically the core of self-service. But then what are further implications? So one, with automation, with self-service, with service robots, what happened is we kind of make things more consistent, right? So there is a consistent level of service, but also the idea of hospitality, hotels, and so on, people are different, right? Guests expect different things. And so with making service level consistent, there is a chance that not a lot of people would be satisfied with the same level of service. The other one that's more important to me is also the idea of control and liabilities. So what happen if there is a service failure? Whose responsibility it is? Is it the developer of the robot? Is it the responsibility of the hotel? Right? So also people do not have the same respect to machines as we do to other human beings. As a guest, if you have certain expectation, you may not be very patient with machines. And so here, if you look at the right, on the left-hand side, there's something, they wrote, "Don't touch the robot," right? But you've also, I think, there's a lot of things in the news where people actually kick a robot delivery because people hate robots, and so they, when they found them roaming around the street, they just like abused them. So that's a problem, right? So if we want to introduce service robots in hospitality, in tourism settings, we need to also be able to communicate and anticipate if people have the same level of tolerance or respect towards machines, because these are programmed or designed to serve you, essentially. And then also, one more issue that's very important is the idea of inclusion. Again, going back to what I mentioned with providing consistent service level, it is actually limiting people with different needs to be served by machines. So basically, by introducing machines to serve tourists and guests, in this case in hotels, you are targeting only a group of people with certain capabilities, certain knowledge, certain efficacy towards technology. So there is also that issue that remains. Now, if you look at service encounter in the past, again, it is all about, contact personnel and so on. And so, I don't know if this would, so this is a video of, this is a robot concierge, so still in the same hotel, so you can ask questions. He's asking if it speaks English, and then it says, yes, I can understand.
So can you tell me where is the nearest convenience stores?
So yeah, so basically that's what happened with tourist encounter. Imagine if you're traveling to Japan, it's your first time. You want to engage in the culture, in local experiences, and this is what you get, right? So imagine. I mean, of course, now not all hotels are like this, of course, but can you imagine if the future we have more and more of this? Because this is not only an isolated case in Japan. We do also learn, for example, Hilton has partnered with IBM with their Connie robot, also serving guests as a concierge. And looking at it from the business perspective, of course, this is a good idea of, not having lots of human labor, cutting cost and everything, and then still providing guests with really good recommendation of what to do, where to go, and so on and so forth. But then, this is what I meant with how we change tourist encounter. And imagine if it doesn't stop at the hotel, but also we go to museums, and then there's robot navigation. We go to the airport. There are robots that guide passengers to the gate and so on. Probably you've heard about KLM with the carry robot that you can actually can take your luggage and then take you to the gates and everything. So things are happening. People, companies are starting to actually think of doing this. And then another one, but I'm going to skip this one. So what are the implications? Now we have to think about roles of employees. And travel, tourism, and hospitality has, as a sector, has traditionally been one of the most, one of the biggest employers, right, in many countries. And a lot of regions and countries actually rely on travel and tourism for their economy. And so with this, with the applications of AI and robotics, and the idea that they could substitute some of the workforce in travel and tourism, if for the countries that have severe labor shortage, for example, such as Japan, because it's hard to find people who actually want to work in hospitality, who actually want to work in tourism, and then they also have aging population with lots of discretionary income, meaning that they do want to travel more, but they don't have people to actually work, or they don't have workforce for hospitality and tourism. So this would be a good solution for the sustainability of travel and tourism, right? And Japan is not the only country with labor shortage issue. But for other countries with healthy employment in travel and tourism, this can actually pose some issues. What would be the roles of employees then? Of course, we can always argue that robots can not only substitute, but more importantly, augment employees' skills, meaning that you can be more effective in your work if you rely on AI systems. Yeah? And also, if we allow robots to do manual work, we can reduce risk of injuries, for example, and fatigue. And then we can allow employees, humans, to actually have more meaningful tasks, jobs, for example, to communicate, to interact more meaningfully with tourists. So in this case, if we look at one of the Sustainable Development Goals, one of them is provision of decent work. And so probably it is not a bad idea, after all, if we are to employ robots, for example, for cleaning, for things that are dangerous, for things that would allow, that would, cause fatigues. So in this case, replacing those tasks would probably be good for the tourism workforce. Now, so those are robots. And then I mentioned earlier with seamless journey in terms of recognition technology. I'm not sure how familiar are you with one of the AI border control. That's a project, I think, funded by EU, Horizon 2020. Basically, they created a system that would automatically assess the risk of passengers, basically. So you can go enter different countries with just your face, and then there will be you will be asked some questions by the machine, and then they will determine if you are allowed to go enter the country or not. So it's basically automated risk assessment plus identification. And so, you can imagine in the past, when we talk about border control, it's always like very scary, guys determine whether or not you can enter a particular country. Now we are relying on AI system to do so. And so there's this level of trust, of course, but also from the perspective of the travelers, it is also, the idea of you being evaluated by machines, whether or not you're a dangerous person. And then also personalization. So this is, for AI systems, one of the things that the travel and tourism can leverage is the idea that we do have big data available, and then being able to have more accurate prediction of what's going to happen, more accurate prediction of what people want, and so on and so forth, will be tremendous in making sure that we actually have more integrated and connected data. So, but from this, the implication will be the idea of collection and use and sharing of personal data, and the idea of course, privacy. So the risk of you being identified is high or higher with automated pattern recognition, because then, even though companies would aggregate personal data and it's anonymous, but essentially, if you cannot be identified as a person, increasingly now you can be identified as part of a small group. So the risk of your identity being stolen, and so on and so forth, and the idea that your patterns of consumption, lifestyle, and so on will be out in the open is higher. Okay, now my last discussion will be about can we shape a sustainable future with AI and robotics, for example. Oh, by the way, this is the robot that got fired. That one on the left-hand side. So I did multiple projects, actually. One is I asked people to write a letter from the future. So I asked people to, in UK and in the US, so I asked them to write a letter from 2039, that is 20 years from now. And I asked, okay, so write a letter about your travel experience in 2039. And it's amazing what people write. And even though I didn't specify that they have to talk about robots, they have to talk about, how advanced technology have become, they actually write all those things. So this is a technique that usually used in psychology for people to articulate their concerns about the world around them in the future. So by basically, I'm not directly asking them to write about technology, but they did. And it's amazing. So I have hundreds of these letters, and then most of them are talking about where could we go in the future? Mars, Moon, blah 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 blah. So it's quite interesting. But to me, it is also about how they envision service would be delivered. So robots and bots, basically, or automation are mentioned. And then also, from this, it is quite interesting to know how people actually think the world will be in terms of sustainability, in terms of environmental issues that we have right now. So lots of people actually wrote, oh, the world, most of the world is now underwater, things like that. So really the concerns that they have about sustainability. I also asked practitioners in tourism to imagine how tourism services, travel tourism services will be in 2039. So we had 2 workshops with Lego Serious Play, so asking them to imagine how the restaurants of the future will look like, how hotels of the future will look like, and it's quite interesting. And these are some of the roles of technology that they imagine it should be in the future. So eliminate friction points for travelers, for tourism, for guests. Technology should carry out mundane tasks. This is according to managers. We use technology to upskill employees, to augment them, making them more effective. And then we use technology to create agile service organizations. So my time is up. Some of the key priorities for me is we have to look into comprehensively what are the social impacts and economic impacts of AI. There are also some ethical and legal issues around AI with ethics, privacy, inclusion, and so on and so forth. Now, what's important to me is the idea of validation, verification, and control. So making sure that we, as human beings, are still in control of, or knowing at least, what what the recommendations coming from AI systems are rooted from. So what are the processes behind recommendations from AI? And that's it for me. Thank you very much for listening.